Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Emily and I post a ton of bookish content every single Friday. And if you are not new here, welcome back. Happy to have you. For today's video, we are at the beginning of a new month. We are at the beginning of February and I decided I would share with you guys everything that I read in January and what is on my TBR list for February. So that is kind of a monthly thing I do here on my channel. If you are new, I like to share both in one video just because I don't tend to read that many books. It wouldn't be a very long video if I just did like a wrap up or I just did a TBR. So combining them is what works for me and I'm sticking with it. If you are a fan of bookish content on YouTube, Instagram, Pinterest, all that stuff, you should be sure to check the description for all my socials. You can go follow all of them if you'd like. I would really appreciate it and I'd love to communicate with you guys and connect, and also subscribe and like this video if you want to see more from me. So I'm gonna start off with all of the books that I read in January, and I actually started off this year with a completely new genre for me, which was fantasy, and I got a Court of Thorns Roses for Christmas, so I ended up reading the first book of the series and I really enjoyed it actually. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm kind of like skimming my reviews for all of these so I can give you guys my real thoughts like in real time about how I felt. So if you are not aware, the Court of Thorns Roses series is kind of like a fantasy romance. It does currently have 5 books to the series, but I know that there are coming out with 2. I also learned that the first 3 books in this series are a trilogy technically, then there's a novella, and then the 5th book and the next 2 that are coming out are a spin-off with the main character from the first trilogy's sister. So we followed Fair in the first 3 and the novella, and then the next 3 are actually more about her sister Nesta. Fun fact, but it's interesting to me and I'm really excited to finish the series. Eventually, I'm hoping I will finish it by the end of the year, but I'm not gonna rush it because I don't want to forget a lot of this stuff before the other 2 books come out. So I did only rate A Court of Thorns Roses 3.5 out of 5 just because I felt like I was still kind of getting used to the fantasy terms and the world building. These are just things that I'm not personally used to yet, so I didn't really feel right rating it 5 because I have a feeling I'm gonna actually read a 5-star at some point. If you are not aware of what this series is about, we basically follow Fair, and she lives in this small village with her father and her 2 sisters, and she goes out because she's the one who actually hunts for the family. She's the only one who knows how. She ends up killing a wolf and bringing it to the village like market to try and sell. And then I guess, I kind of forget what the immortals are called at this point in time, but anyway, one comes to her village and actually tells her that she has to make up an ultimatum for the mistake she made because the wolf wasn't actually a wolf, it was one of the immortals, and so she either had to be killed on the spot or live in the spring court for the rest of her life. She can't see her family ever again. So she ends up choosing the latter, and her family agrees that's the best thing to do because she's way too powerful and strong and smart for the small village that they live in anyway. So she ends up having to go move to the spring court and never see her family again. When she gets there, she doesn't realize that the house that she's going to be living in is so extravagant, so she moves in. She meets Tamlin and Lucian, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Alice and a bunch of different people. Basically, it's a romance between Fair, immortal, and Tamlin, who is immortal, and it's kind of like a forbidden love situation. And the whole premise of the book is basically that there's this blight happening in the spring court, and Tamlin has to go out and fight all of these demons and creatures and monsters that are kind of coming into the spring court. And over time, Fair just kind of gains a connection with him, and a lot of stuff goes down. I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, but it's such a good book. There's so much action, a lot of romance. Like I said, the world building was so good, and yeah, I wouldn't change anything about it, but I also, like I said, I can't give it a 5-star without reading more fantasy first. So the next book that I was planning on reading, and I did get 55% of the way through, was False Witness by Karen Slaughter. Unfortunately, this was my first ever DNF because while the writing and the plot and everything about this book I think was actually really well done, there's just a lot of trigger warnings that I was not prepared for. So if you do want to pick up this book, it talks a lot about rape, drug addiction, suicide, family abuse, just basically anything under the sun. And Karen Slaughter does such a great job at describing things that it was a little bit too much for me. So unfortunately, it was the January book pick too for Lost in the Plot book club. So we did have our meeting at the end of January talking about this book, but it just felt kind of weird because I didn't actually read all of it. I did read some spoilers just so I could know like what was going on at the end while everyone was discussing it. So I can basically give the premise of this book. It's that it starts with two sisters when they are very young. I believe Callie is 13 or 12 or something like that, or maybe something around there. And Lee, who is her older sister, is just like a few years older. Callie has to like babysit this little boy named Trevor, and she actually has a relationship with his dad, who is like 40. So that part was already just like a lot for me to handle. So they get in a fight and essentially there is a murder. I won't describe like how it happens or anything like that because I feel like that's pretty important to the story. And then in the next chapter, it basically just goes through them as adults. So it goes actually into Callie's sister's point of view, Lee, and she is a defense attorney. And the little boy who was the father's son, you know what I mean, was actually convicted of rape himself now that it's like years later. And he finds Lee and actually wants her to be the one to defend him. And Lee knows about the murder and she's obviously freaking out. She doesn't know if he knows the secret or not. And from there, it kind of just gets really intense. Callie has grown up and has also not become the best influence, if you want to put it that way. And yeah, it's basically a murder mystery with a lot of really graphic content. So I know the ending was actually really good based on what I read, and I think it would be a great book as long as you are not triggered by all those things I mentioned before. But I didn't give it a rating or anything. So, and the next book that I read in January was The Finish Line. Guys, I'm actually really sad that I finished this book. I finished this entire series. So this is the Ravenhood series. I'm not going to go into what happens in the first two books because I've already talked about it on this channel probably like 6 times now. But in The Finish Line, we basically follow Cecilia and her final love interest try to domestically live together, even though that's nowhere near how these people live. It's not natural for them, but her love interest is determined to kind of fit into her life because he loves her that much, and we kind of just follow her and her love interest grow together. He tries so hard to do things to make her realize he loves her, and she's kind of like, she complains a lot in the book. She's a little bit of crybaby, which at first kind of irked me, but there are plot twists that end up explaining why all of that is. So it's a really good book, and I think that she ended off the series in the perfect way. I feel like she really wrapped everything up in the epilogue as well, talking about where Cecilia was with her love interest and all that stuff. So I gave this a 4 out of 5 star. The only book in the series I gave 5 out of 5 was Flock, just because I feel like so much was happening and I love the introduction of meeting characters. But the last 2 books were still impeccable. There were just a few little things that I was like, a little repetitive maybe, like really angsty for no reason. Just a little bit repetitive, but other than that, the second 2 books in the series were 4 out of 5s and they were still impeccable. So I finished off the series. I'm really sad about it. I would rate it a 4.5 out of 5 series, and I highly recommend you go pick this up. It is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have a Kindle, you can do it that way, or you can pick it up on Amazon. I don't think they sell it in a lot of bookstores. I work at Indigo and we don't sell it because it's a little bit more of an indie erotic book, but nonetheless, if you love spicy dark romances, I think this one you would really love. It has a little bit of a Twilight vibe to it. And the last book that I read in January was actually an ARC that I was sent by NetGalley, so thank you so much. And it is What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. I was really happy with this book. I was a little bit surprised that I enjoyed it so much. I will say that this one is probably more so a novella. It was about 176 pages, and I didn't rate it like a 5 out of 5 or anything. I rated it a 3 out of 5. Like I said, kind of with my first fantasy, this was kind of like my first horror novella, so I didn't really want to overrate it because it wasn't like one of my new all-time favorite books, but it also was very well written. This is one of those books, because it is so short, it's hard to explain without ruining and spoiling things, but basically we follow this person who used to be in the war named Easton. He goes to help his friend because his sister is sick and dying, and there is a pretty crazy disease or something. I don't want to say exactly what it was, but there's a crazy disease going around in the forest that they live in, and it's kind of like a horror of figuring out what is happening, and the way it describes things and allows you to visualize what's going on. I think the horror aspect of it was just like how icky and like uncomfortable it makes you feel, because while it was still scary, I feel like it was just more so the writing of describing how the disease was affecting people and animals and stuff like that that really just like irked me, because this is something that I feel like could happen. Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It does come out in July of 2022, so if you are interested at all, you should definitely go pick it up. G. Kingfisher's writing is so good. I know I'm gonna be picking up more of their work in the future. Okay guys, let's get into my TBR for February, because I'm really excited about it. For February's book pick of Lost in the Plot book club, we have chosen Ugly Love. I don't know why I did that. We chose Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I'm already like 30% of the way through this book. I think it's gonna be a 5 out of 5 already. Like, it's so good. I was definitely expecting something a little bit different, because I did hear that the main character was a pilot, and I just didn't realize that there was more like family dynamic than I expected, because we follow Tate Collins, who is a young woman who wants to go to nursing school, is super focused on her career, and she ends up moving to San Francisco and moving in with her brother so she can study there. Her brother Corbin is also a pilot, and one of his friends that lives in the same building as him is Miles Archer, who is the love interest for Tate. And I really love that the present point of view is Tate's, and we also see the past point of view about 6 years earlier from Miles, so that you can understand why he's not looking for a relationship. And yeah, I haven't really gotten too far into it. There has been a little bit of spice, and I'm only 30% of the way through, so this is super angsty, but also like adorable. Like, Colleen Hoover never disappoints. We all know this already, but so far I'm really loving this book, and I will let you guys know next month how I felt about it. This is definitely a Colleen Hoover month. I'm just gonna warn you guys, because it is love month, it's February, and I wanted to read a few of her books to kind of catch up. So the next one I'm gonna be reading is It Ends With Us, and like, again, I already know it's gonna be a 5 out of 5, but I'm so excited to read this. This book is about Lily, who is a super hardworking young woman, and she actually used to live in a small town in Maine and moves to Boston to achieve her dreams. And she ends up falling in love with this very attractive neurosurgeon named Ryle, who is very stubborn, assertive, and doesn't really want a committed serious relationship as well. I'm sure we're gonna learn like why that is. Ryle has a soft spot for Lily, and they do like date, I guess, but while there are more like questions and things that she has for him, she kind of becomes overwhelmed with the relationship, and then she kind of thinks about her past relationship with this guy named Atlas, who actually comes back into the picture, and I guess she kind of has to figure out who she loves more and who she wants to be with. So it's definitely more of like a love triangle type of book. I'm really excited about it. I haven't really read a love triangle book yet. I think I've only read like a polyamorous book, which was also really good. But yeah, I'm super excited because I know Colleen never disappoints. I really hope I like this book. And the last book that I plan on reading is also a Colleen Hoover book that just came out, and that is Reminders of Him. This came out in January, on January 18th, and it sounds so good. So I know this one a little bit better just because like I'm really excited about it. This one follows a woman named Kenna who was just in prison for 5 years, and she's now being released, and her main goal is to go back to the town she lived in, find her 4-year-old daughter, and connect with her again. So that's like one of her main goals, and a lot of people from the town obviously don't trust her anymore, don't really want to be a part of her life because she was in prison, so people just like don't trust her anymore. and the only guy who still trusts her and also has like kind of a connection to her daughter is this bar owner named Ledger. So I'm pretty sure what kind of happens is she obviously like falls for Ledger, or Ledger falls for her, and there's some drama around that because the more they connect and the more people realize that they are together, there's more pressure and there's more risk. So I don't know what those are, obviously. I have to read it. And I think the goal of this book is for Kenna to basically absolve all of her mistakes from the past and hopefully heal, find love, and be with her daughter. So I have a feeling this is going to be a really heartbreaking book for me. I have such high maternal instincts already, so a mother-daughter book is probably gonna like break my heart, but I am very excited to read this. This is gonna be my last book in February. However, I do have one more honorable mention just in case I get to it. So the one honorable mention that I have that I plan on reading in March technically, but if I get to it at the end of February, it is My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing. I have not read this yet, and I've owned it for like 2 years almost. I think like, yeah, it's been like 2 years and 1 month since I got this book for Christmas in like 2020 Christmas, I believe, and I've been wanting to read this so bad. If you are not aware of what this is, it is a thriller with a married couple, and basically their relationship thrives by murdering together. And I absolutely love the last sentence of this book. It literally says, "We all have our secrets to keeping a marriage alive, and ours just happens to be getting away with murder." Like, what? So I've never read a book like this. I have been more of like on a romance kick lately, but I really want to get back into thrillers as well because usually the ending of thrillers just like blows my mind. So this is going to be a book I read in my birthday month in March, and I can't wait. Alright guys, so those are all the books that I plan on reading in February and all the books that I read in January. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. And yeah, if you're new here, like I said, be sure to subscribe if you want to see more from me. All my books keep falling. I would love to connect with some of you and be friends. Do not forget to look at the description if you want to see all the books that I talked about, as well as all my socials. And that's it for today. So I will see you guys next week with another video, and I hope you guys have a lovely day or night wherever you live. Bye!